Before I tell you this story, before I open the doors to the most painful chapter of my life, I want you to pause and make a decision. If you are here, it's not by accident. This story will take you through penthouse windows and chandelier-lit halls into the deepest shadows that money cannot chase away. It will pull you from the glittering rooftops of Lagos Island into a silence so loud it still echoes in my bones. So I'm asking you, subscribe now. Stay until the very last second, because the ending is something you won't see coming. And maybe, just maybe, it will make you look at love, trust, and family in a way you never have before. It was a Wednesday evening. The sky over Victoria Island was tinted gold, the kind of sunset that could make even the filthiest street gutters look like they were made of melted copper. I was in my walk-in closet, buried under silk blouses and designer skirts, packing for a weekend trip to Cape Town with my husband. That's when I heard it, a sound so small, so fragile, it felt like the air itself might shatter. A whimper, coming from my daughter's room. I had walked past her door 1,000 times, but that day I stopped. My hand froze on the brass handle, and when I pushed the door open, my world did not end with an explosion. It ended with a stillness so complete. It was as if the earth had stopped turning. She was curled up on her bed, not asleep, not awake. Her eyes were open but not looking at me. They were looking through me, and I knew, before she even said a word, something had been taken from her. Something I could never buy back. That was the moment I stopped being the woman who threw charity galas, the woman who graced magazine covers in diamond earrings and glassy smiles. That was the moment I became a mother who would burn the world to protect her child. But let me take you back. Because to understand the fire that rose in me, you must first understand the palace we built and the cracks we ignored. I lived, in one of those estates where the gates are taller than the houses outside them, where the security guards have radios crackling in their ears and visitors wait an hour just to get clearance, where the streets inside are so smooth, so clean, you'd think they were carved from marble. Our home stood like a glass crown in the center of the estate. 3 floors, endless balconies, a rooftop pool that overlooked the restless Atlantic. From there, you could see the sprawl of Lagos, the glittering chaos of the island, the slow crawl of traffic on the 3rd mainland bridge, the sea of rooftops in Lekki Phase 1. Inside, everything gleamed. Imported Italian tiles, crystal chandeliers from France, a kitchen so pristine it could have been a showroom. The kind of place where every corner smelled faintly of jasmine and floor polish. And in that house was my little girl. To the outside world, my life was perfect. A billionaire husband who built half the towers on Victoria Island. A social calendar filled with charity luncheons and art exhibitions. A daughter who was always dressed in matching silk bows and patent leather shoes. I had staff for everything. A chef from Abuja who could make jollof rice so good it brought grown men to tears. A driver who could navigate Lagos traffic like he was part of it. And then there was her, the maid. Quiet, efficient, always in the background. I remember thinking she was the kind of help you never had to worry about. Not flashy, not loud. Just there, like furniture you trusted. She handled my daughter's bedtime routines, her meals, even the little things I told myself I was too busy to do. Looking back now, I hate myself for how easily I handed over that trust. It began so subtly, I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. My daughter's laughter, the kind that used to bounce off the marble floors, became rare. She stopped playing on the rooftop garden. She flinched when the maid entered the room. I thought she was just growing shy, or maybe tired from school. But then there were nights I would hear her crying through the walls. Not loud, just soft, steady sobs. I would hold her, stroke her hair, ask what was wrong. And she would press her face into my shoulder, saying nothing. At the time, I told myself children were mysterious, that they had moods like tides. But the truth? The truth was I didn't want to look too closely. That Wednesday, I was packing for a trip I should never have planned. The air smelled faintly of Chanel perfume and the city's evening dust. When I heard that whimper, when I opened that door, her body was trembling, not from cold, from something older than her years, something that had been building for days, weeks, maybe months. I sat beside her, my heart breaking with every shallow breath she took. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but instead, a single tear rolled down her cheek. That's when I noticed the maid's scarf, folded on the bed, as if she had just been there. I did not scream. I did not call my husband. I simply held my daughter, my hands shaking as the sun dipped behind the Lego skyline. Because in that moment, I understood something every mother fears. Monsters don't always come in the form we expect. And the worst ones sometimes live in our own house. Before we continue, if you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just a story about a rich family in Legos. It's a story about what hides behind glass walls and diamond smiles. And if you think you've heard the worst of it, you haven't. So subscribe now, because the next minutes will take you deeper into the cracks of my perfect world. And I want you there when we reach the bottom. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside my husband, his breathing deep and steady, while my mind replayed that moment over and over. My daughter's eyes staring through me, the scarf folded on her bed. The house was silent, but I could hear the hum of the city outside, the distant honk of a Danfo bus in the night, the muffled bass of music from some rooftop party across the estate. Lagos never really sleeps, but that night, I felt like I was the only one awake in the whole city. The next morning, I moved through the house differently. It wasn't my home anymore, it was a stage, and I was watching everyone perform. The chef, bustling in the kitchen, singing under his breath. The driver, polishing the car in the driveway. And the maid, she was there in her usual beige uniform, hair neatly tied back, eyes downcast. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect employee. But to me, she was suddenly sharper. Every movement too calculated, every glance too quick. I realized something then. Trust, once cracked, turns everything into suspicion. I started to notice the small things. The way my daughter stiffened when the maid's shadow fell across her. How she avoided certain rooms in the house. How she never asked for bedtime stories anymore. I remembered a time, just months ago, when she would wait at the gate for me to return from charity meetings, her arms outstretched, her laughter carrying across the marble courtyard. Now she barely looked up. It was like watching a flower wilt under a sun no one else could see. Our home had always been open to me, but now I began to feel like a stranger in certain corners. The maid's quarters were on the far side of the house, down a corridor that smelled faintly of soap and damp air. I had no reason to go there before, but one afternoon, when she went to the market, I walked in. Her room was tidy, but not spotless. There was a small pile of laundry in the corner, a pair of slippers under the bed, and on her dresser, a photograph. It was of her and my daughter. My daughter was smiling, but not the smile I knew. This one was tense, forced, the kind you give when someone says, "Smile for the camera," and you wish they wouldn't. Something inside me twisted. I tried, gently, to speak to my daughter, but she seemed to live behind a wall now. Her answers were short. Her eyes slid away from mine. I started sitting with her at night, pretending to read while she drifted off. I would listen for every sound in the house. Footsteps in the corridor, the creak of a door. And sometimes, I would catch the maid watching from the doorway, not smiling, just watching. Outside the house, nothing had changed. I still attended cocktail parties in Eco Hotel's gold-lit halls. Still posed for photographs at art auctions in Ikoyi. Still wore my gold bracelets and silk gowns, the ones imported from Milan. People would ask about my daughter, and I would tell them she was well. I would smile, but inside I was unraveling. There is a particular pain in knowing something is wrong, but not being able to prove it. Every mother has instincts. Mine were screaming. I started adjusting my schedule, canceling trips, coming home early, moving silently through the house at hours I wasn't expected. One evening, I came in earlier than planned. The sun was setting, painting the estate in amber light. I walked past the hallway to my daughter's room and stopped. The door was ajar. I could hear the low murmur of a voice, the maid's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but my daughter's silence in response was deafening. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't push the door open this time. Not yet. I realized then that confronting her without proof would lead nowhere. The maid could lie. My daughter might stay silent. My husband might doubt me, or worse, think I was imagining it. No, I needed to be sure. So I began to watch her the way a hunter watches prey, not rushing, not showing my hand, waiting for the moment when the truth would step into the light. It was a Friday when it happened. The house was quiet. My husband was in Abuja on business. I told the staff I would be working late in my study, and for hours I sat there pretending to go through documents while the real work was listening. At around midnight, I heard it, the faint creak of floorboards outside my study. I moved silently, following the sound down the corridor, past the dining room, toward my daughter's wing of the house. The air felt heavy, charged, and then I saw a shadow in the crack of her doorway. I stopped breathing. The scene before me was half hidden, bathed in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Enough to know my fears were not unfounded. My fingers curled into fists. My heart was no longer breaking. It was sharpening into a weapon. The glass palace I had built was about to shatter. And when it did, there would be no survivors. If you've been here from the beginning, you already know the cracks in my perfect life have split wide open. But in this episode, the light finally begins to shine into the darkness, and what it reveals will change everything. If you're new here, subscribe. Stay until the last second, because when the final piece of the truth fell into my hands, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my daughter. I was fighting for the soul of my home. The shadow in my daughter's doorway had burned itself into my memory. It was the confirmation my instincts had been screaming for, but not enough to act on. Not yet. I knew the maid. I knew her kind of careful. The kind that could twist lies into truth and truth into dust. If I struck too soon, she would vanish into the Lagos night, slip into another house, another family, another child's life. No, I had to close the trap completely. By day, I kept my mask perfectly in place. Brunch at the Wheat Baker Hotel. Meetings in glass boardrooms high above Victoria Island, where the sea sparkled like broken glass beyond the windows. I still wore my fitted dresses and my Louboutins, my gold hoops glinting under the sun. But at night, I was someone else entirely. I became a shadow inside my own home, learning the creak of every stair, the echo of every corridor, the sound of the wind rattling the balcony doors. One afternoon, I visited a boutique in Ikoyi. Not for clothes, for something no one in my social circle would expect me to buy. A discreet camera the size of a lipstick tube. It was meant for home security, the kind tech shops advertise for watching your gate or your car. But I knew exactly where I'd put it. That night, when the house slept, I placed it high on the bookshelf in my daughter's room, its lens hidden among the spines of fairy tale books she no longer touched. I told myself it was only for confirmation, but deep down, I knew it was also for confrontation. Waiting is a kind of torture. Days passed. I tried to act normal, but every sound in the house felt like a signal. I began to notice how the maid timed her presence, how she moved when she thought I was distracted, how my daughter's eyes would sometimes flick toward me when the maid entered, as if silently asking for rescue. The city outside roared on, the constant Lagos traffic jams, the vendors shouting on the streets, the sirens in the distance. But inside my walls, everything was a slow, suffocating silence. It was a Thursday when I finally gathered the courage to check the camera. I locked my study door, pulled the tiny memory card from its slot, and slipped it into my laptop. At first, it was nothing. Hours of empty room, soft daylight shifting across the walls, my daughter doing homework, playing with her dolls. And then, the maid entered. The way she closed the door, too softly. The way she moved, too close. I didn't need to hear words. I didn't need to see more than the way my daughter froze, her small hands curling into fists. That was all the confirmation I would ever need. I had always thought rage would be loud, that it would come in screams and broken glass. But this rage was quiet. It burned low and steady, like coals in the heart of a fire pit. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I simply knew what I had to do. I decided to trap her in her own routine. Friday night, my husband would return from Abuja. I would host a small dinner, nothing elaborate, just enough to keep the other staff busy, to make the maid believe she was unnoticed. And then, when the moment came, I would be ready. Lagos nights are deceptive. They glitter with city lights, the hum of rooftop bars, the smell of roasted plantain from street corners. They make you believe the world is beautiful. Inside my house, the dining table was set with silver cutlery and white roses. My husband sat at the head, talking about a new skyscraper project in Eco-Atlantic City. I smiled when I had to, laughed when it was expected, but my ears were tuned to the hallway beyond the dining room. Halfway through dessert, I saw it. The maid slipping quietly down the corridor toward my daughter's room. My fork clinked softly against my plate. I excused myself, my heels silent against the polished floors. This was it. I stood outside my daughter's door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. My hand was on the handle. On the other side of that door was the truth, the confrontation, the breaking point. And when I opened it, everything I thought I knew about loyalty, about trust, about the safety of my home would be gone forever. My hand was on the door handle. I could hear her voice, low, coaxing, a tone I had learned to dread without understanding why. My daughter's silence was the loudest thing in that room. The silver light from the hallway spilled in when I pushed the door open. She spun around, startled, her eyes wide like an animal caught in the headlights of an oncoming car. My daughter's gaze met mine, and in that instant, whatever wall had been between us collapsed. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply walked in, crossing the polished floor with slow, deliberate steps. My presence was enough to make the maid step back, her lips parting in some excuse I would never let her speak. There's a kind of power in silence, a weight heavier than any words. I stood between her and my daughter, my body blocking every possible path. I told her to leave the room. My voice was low, steady, but it carried something sharp enough to cut through the air. She hesitated, then slipped past me, out into the hallway. I locked the door behind her. Before anything else, I knelt beside my daughter's bed. Her small hands were trembling, her eyes searching mine for something. Safety, assurance, a promise I would never let her down again. I pulled her close, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't resist. That's when I knew I could never let this woman spend another night under my roof. I found her in the corridor outside the staff quarters. She started to speak, but I raised my hand and she stopped. I told her to pack her things. Now, there were no arguments, no denials, just the quick, jerky movements of someone who knew the game was over. As she stuffed clothes into a small travel bag, I stood in the doorway, watching her. The rage inside me wasn't loud anymore. It was cold, focused. I didn't call my husband. I didn't call the police, not yet. I had the driver take her to the estate gate. The security men, sensing the weight of the moment, opened it without question. She stepped out into the night, swallowed by the hum of the city beyond. I never saw her again. When my husband returned, I told him everything. At first, there was disbelief, a stubborn refusal to accept that something like this could happen under our roof. But when I showed him the footage, his face changed. We sat together in the dim light of our study, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass walls, both of us silent. The world outside kept moving, car horns, generator hums, the restless sea breeze. But inside, time seemed to stop. In Lagos, justice is a complicated thing. You can have all the money in the world, but the system has its own pace, its own politics. We filed the report, handed over the footage, but I knew the road ahead would be long. So I shifted my focus to what mattered most, my daughter's healing. I became her shadow. School drop-offs, bedtime, meals. I was there for everything. We started therapy quietly, in a discreet clinic in Ikoyi where no one from our social circle would see us. It was slow work. Some days she would talk. Some days she wouldn't. But little by little, her laughter began to return. Not all at once. Not the same as before. But enough to remind me that she was still here, still mine. The house itself felt different now. Every corner held a memory I wished I could erase. So I changed things. New curtains in her room. Fresh paint on the walls. I even replaced the chandelier in the hallway, as if changing the light could change the past. And in a way it did. The air felt less heavy. People think money is a shield, that behind gates and guards and glittering chandeliers, You are untouchable. But the truth? The worst things can happen in the most beautiful rooms. I used to believe my wealth was my daughter's protection. Now I know it's me, my vigilance, my presence, my refusal to ever hand over my trust so easily again. If you're watching this and you have children, remember this. Trust is not about how long someone has been in your home. It's about what you see and what you choose not to ignore. I ignored the signs once. I will never do it again. And though the glass palace I built has cracks now, those cracks let the light in. The light of truth. The light of healing. The light of a mother who will never look away again. This was my story. It's not the story I wanted to tell, but it's the one I had to. If it reached you, if it made you think, if it made you look at your home differently, subscribe. Because here, we tell the stories people hide. And sometimes, hearing them can save a life.